Okay, so for this tutorial, I am going to teach you about an element in cascading style sheets called Flexbox. And what Flexbox is essentially is a way to sort of organize all of your components of your website into rows or columns. And it's really useful. It's a really common, as well as a very complex element to use. It's used in a broad sense. And what I mean is that there are many like sub-elements to Flexbox, and it can be used in a lot of different applications. So let's just get straight into this element. So I'm going to start by having a doc type. So type it, yep, and press tab. So I already have my web portal opened here. So we can just name this Flexbox tutorial. And in my body, I'm going to make one div. So, and this div is going to be called my Flexbox container, and then plus tab. So I've created a class, and within this class, I'm going to create 3 more divs, and this is going to be called wait, let's do that again. So this would be container, all right, container 1, right? And then we're going to I'm going to press Option Shift and the down arrow key to make duplicates of this. 2 more duplicates, and then I'm going to just change the name to 2 and 3. So I've created 3 containers within my Flexbox container. Let's just space this out a bit so that it's easier to see the structure, right? And within each of these, I'm going to create a heading as well, which is wait a sec. So I'm going to create a heading, and I'm going to give it a class of C1 title. So in here, I'm going to just copy some text. Just give me a minute. So all right, so I'm going to put in this text. I'm going to container 1. Yeah, that. And then I'm going to do the same thing for my other containers. So there we go. And let me just pause. So we are going to then, I'm going to make another copy of this. Right, so I made 2 copies. I'm going to make this. So I have 1, 2, and 3. I've given them classes, and you're going to see in a short time as to why I made these classes. So I've saved that, and so far I have nothing. That's because I haven't really added any styles to it. So we're going to move on to the styles. I'm going to create a body. So you don't really have to type anything before the body. You can just write body, and then it will link to this. Yeah, I've also forgotten to add a link. So this is going to be style sheet. It's going to be called style sheet CSS. And still there's nothing there because, for example, let's just test if it's working. Okay. That's a bit interesting. Okay. It's just meant to be like that. So let's just do the following. I'm going to add the following elements. So there we go. So I've applied these styles. Still don't really see anything. Okay. Let's see here. Let's just refresh it. There we go. So yeah, so I had to just refresh it. Right now you just see a gray background, and I have all my text here. So what is next? Right. Apparently this is not the correct thing that I'm supposed to have. It's actually meant to be white. It's meant for another element. So that's meant for my Flexbox container that I'm going to do shortly. We have a background color. We're going to have a height of 100 view height. We're going to have a width of 100 view. I think it's just going to be 100%. 100% view. Yeah, and then I'm also going to add box sizing. I'm just going to call it border box. So basically what this does is if you have any elements, right, any object in your website, then that it's not going to go past the dimensions that I've set here. Yeah, so it looks like this. You can see how it's quite long. I'll try to do this. Yeah, there you go. So there we go. Now you can see the full text. Right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create, I'm going to copy this, my Flexbox container. And I'm going to add the following elements. Give me a sec. Add these elements. So there you go. So I added a background to my Flexbox container. And I'm then going to add my containers. So this is container 1. And in container 1, I'm going to add the following styles. So I've created a box, right? So I've set a margin of 20 pixels, a width and height of 200 pixels, and a background color of light blue and border and all that. Yeah. And so the element that I've used is display flex. I've just defined the content to be the center, and I've also aligned the items to be in the center. So you'll see the effects of this in a short while. So I'm going to do this similarly for container 2 and 3. So again, I'm going to hold Option and Shift and the down arrow key, make 2 copies of this. And I'm going to set this to container 2 and container 3. What we get is this. You can see that the text is going above the, beyond the boxes themselves. So we will change that. I'm going to change the style elements of these. So we have that. Oh, that's a bit irritating. It's a bit irritating. Right. So we're going to do the same thing for container 3. I'm just going to copy the elements, the styles that I've made previously. I'm just going to do that and then save it. Now we have different colors and they're of different sizes. You can see this is the longest one. This is around 50 pixels. This is around 150. Yeah, 120 pixels and 50 and 200 pixels. So I've added that, and now I'm going to apply the styles to the text. So this is where the class comes in for each of my headings. So I have C1 title, C2 title. So I'm just going to copy this text, put it here. Wait, whoops, I didn't do the correct formatting. So put a dot and then you do that. Whoops. That's a bit weird. Okay, I'm just going to type it in. C1 title and the curly brackets. And here I'm going to apply the following styles. So I'm going to have and the text to align at the center of the container. I'm going to set the height of the text box as 160 pixels, and I'm going to add an overflow element. So what overflow does is that if your text is too long and it is going beyond the box here, so you see how the text is going beyond it. What overflow is going to do is it's going to add a scroll bar when the text is going above the dimensions of the container. So if I just save that, you see how the text is now inside my container, and you can use the scroll bar to look at the entire text. Now I'm going to do similar. I'm going to do something similar with all my other titles. So I'm going to do this. This is, I think, for container 3, and then for container 2. I can't find my, yeah, there we go. So I have all the styles pre-made. Now you can see all the text is within my boxes, within my containers. This is a bit different here. Container 1, container 1, container 1. Oh yeah, I did not change that. All right, so let's change that. And all right, so there's something wrong here. Yeah, didn't apply the text align. Let's make it a center. And there we go. And a bit this is a bit too big for some reason. Maybe because I have a height of 200 here, I only have. Let's do that. Okay, that's a bit too much. Let's do 100. Maybe 80. 110. Yeah, I think you have to adjust this so that it kind of fits in, which is a bit weird. So you have to change the height of the text. Let's make this 160. I think that should be fine. Yeah, there we go. So you can still read all the text in here. And now I'm going to explain to you what I did exactly for each of my containers. So in my Flexbox container, I added a background color. I gave it a specific height and as well as a margin so that they're evenly spaced out. They're 10 pixels apart, I think. I give a padding of 0. And then I use this display element, and then I title flex. There are other ways. There's also the flex grid, and then there's also the flex box. But for now, we're just going to use flex. And then I typed in justify dash content. And what this does is basically aligns, as you can see here, it aligns the flex items along the main axis of the current line of the flex container. So the horizontal axis is called the main axis in this case, and the vertical axis is called the cross axis. And I think that's going to be quite important because if you look at the definitions, they're going to use that reference of the cross and main axis. So here, the element called align items, it is defined as basically align items along the cross axis of the current line of the flex container. And the same thing for the flex direction. It specifies which direction the containers are. I keep on calling it boxes. But yeah, they're containers. And so they're aligned in a row instead of a column. And then we can change that later on. And as you can see, what I did is for each of the containers, I created a margin of 20 pixels. Sorry, so this is 20 pixels that you see here. I gave each of the containers different widths. I think they are the same height. Yeah, they're the same height, as you can see. And the background color, I gave them basically like sky blue, sea green, and coral, like coral. So you can obviously change them so that you can distinguish between the different containers. I gave each of the containers a border of 10 pixels. It's solid and it's black. And this element here is called flex grow, which basically is an element in which you have you can specify numbers between 0 and 1. So this is another way of kind of representing the percentage of which you want your flex items to grow. So what that means is that if I were to shrink this, it will shorten. And if I were to expand it, the containers grow. The width of the containers, they grow, as well as the text correspond to that change in height and width. For example, I mean, if I were to change the height, it wouldn't really do much. And if I change the width, it does that, right? So now we go on to the titles. I aligned all the text to the center, which is called, so I used the element text align. I gave a height of 160 pixels, I think, to all of them, yeah. And yeah, the overflow element in each of the titles, each of the text. And I set it to auto. There are different ways of changing it. For example, there's, I think there's scroll, and then there's disappear or vanish or something like that. Visible, yeah. Yeah. So basically, if it were to flow, it would still go over the box, but let's just keep it to auto for now because it looks better. And for this tutorial, I added text. You can basically add images and videos as well, and you can apply the same effects to all of them. I think there's one more thing that I have to show you, and that is if you want to, if your border, if your tab was basically smaller, then how would you basically change that from a row to a column? And I'm going to apply the following effects to it. So just give me a sec. Right. So what I did here is I set a display sort of limit. I don't know if you would call it a limitation or if you would to call it like something different, but here there's what you have to do is you have to type in asterisk, and then you have to type in media. And then what I did is I set the max width to be 940 pixels. And what this does is that if the dimensions of my tab, the width of the dimension of the tab were to be smaller than 940 pixels, then I will apply the following changes to all my elements. So I set the flex direction to column instead of row. And then I've also changed the width and height of all the containers. And you will see that in a second. So if I were to make this, so for now, let's inspect this. And if I were to press this, this is what 940 would do, right? So this is 940 pixels. If I were to make this smaller, so that one, yeah, you don't really see a change right now. But I think if I were to just do this with the tab itself, wait a second. It's not really changing anything. Oh yeah, because this is Flexbox, it's not Flexbox container. There we go. I think it will work now. So let's change this. There we go. So now you see there in the column format instead of a row, and then you can make it as small as you want. And then that's a cool feature that a lot of people use. If I go to inspect, I think it'll work. So I have 940 pixels. And the moment I get, the moment smaller than 940 pixels in width, yeah, basically at 940 and less than that, it's going to be a column. And if I expand it, if I make it like 1,000, then it's going to turn into a row. And I think that is it for this tutorial. It's really not that hard. There is like a few, there are a few elements that are a bit sort of difficult to implement. I mean, there are many more elements that you can use, but they will be slightly of a more advanced level. I mean, if you want to apply a bit more advanced sort of effects to your containers, then there are elements to them. There's something called, I will type it here, this is called flex basis, which would not apply right now because I don't have it in the thing there. There are many others, and then there's also the display grid, which is again a very interesting element, interesting style. It's a bit more complicated than the display flex because the display flex only works for like a row or a column of containers. But if you were to use display grid, then you would have you could create like a collage or like a gallery of different containers. And it's a lot more complicated than that. So I'm going to make a separate tutorial on that. Didn't save that. It's a bit weird. There we go. Makes more sense. Yeah. All right. So thank you very much for this tutorial. If you have any questions, then you can obviously email me. And yeah.